Hey, cybersecurity nerds, and in this video, in the forensic series, we will analyze the infamous Cerber ransomware. So Cerber ransomware is a type of malware, malicious software, that basically encrypts your files and then holds them for ransom. It usually demands the ransom in some type of cryptocurrency, most probably in Bitcoin. We shall see later. We're going to use two methods. So in the first video, we're going to use the static malware analysis, and the second, we're going to use the dynamic malware analysis. The difference between the two is in the static malware analysis, we don't actually open the file. We just analyze it, analyze the sample with different tools. We try to get the hash value. We try to see whether the sample is packed or not. We want to see when the file was compiled, whether it has any embedded executables and so on. Uh, Once we see the strings as well of the file and so forth. Whereas in the dynamic malware analysis, we actually put it in an environment that is isolated from the outside world. We might simulate internet connection if we like, and then use different tools like Wireshark, like ProcDot, ProcMon, Process Hacker, to basically see upon execution what the file does. So when we open it to see what kind of processes it creates, what kind of functions does it use, what kind of calls does it make to the internet and so forth, and basically see what the file does. Our setup is going to be the first is our Linux machine, which is a Linux distribution specifically designed for forensic analysis. And this tool will be our Windows 10 machine, which is going to be the infected machine. Right. So we have Cerber ransomware already on the computer. Let's try and open it with PD Studio. PD Studio is one of my favorite tools for analyzing malware using the static method. Basically, whenever I'm analyzing a piece of malware, I always load it into PD Studio first because it provides so much information about the sample, and it gives me a wealth of information for me to start building out my report. It's great for doing like initial stage triage on the sample. So what I just did, I dragged and dropped the file in the tool itself. And here on the main tab, we see, upon opening it, we see um, all the MD5, the SHA-1, the 256 hashes that are there that can basically help us out when we want to search for those hashes inside a database like VirusTotal to see if some other person has already analyzed the sample and knows what it's all about. I'm sure if we hit this hash in VirusTotal, it's just gonna flare. It's just going to show that it's complete, Cerber ransomware. It's very dangerous. Delete it, don't open it, and all that stuff. Right. The second thing that I'm looking for that I usually use in my report is we want to find out whether the sample is executable or not, right? And from this hex value, I can definitely say that this is an executable. The 4D5A usually that comes in and which is translated into ASCII MZ, that basically tells me that the file is an executable. So if I click on it, it's going to open, it's going to run something, right? This is at the moment, this is what we know. That's the file size in terms of bytes. So we see that it's not such a big file. It's in fact quite a small file. Here we see the entropy. Entropy is basically it's calculated from 0 to 8, and 8 means uh, basically that the sample is packed or that it's obfuscated, and we need to perform some sort of deobfuscation in order for us to understand what's going on with the sample. So usually around between 7 and 8 is where samples are really packed. So this I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to understand some information, get some information at least on what the functions are, on what the strings are. They're not so much obfuscated in a sense. Another great tab that we would want to analyze is the indicators tab. Basically, the indicators tab highlights data within the sample that may be malicious and of interest to a malware analyst. We can see that PE Studio has identified a number of indicators and classified them on a scale of 1 to 4 here, and 1 being confident that this is malicious, that it is a malicious indicator. In this example, it has identified some malicious indicators. Here we see the file references strings. This is a level 1, which is type blacklist, and the second one is the file references functions that are type blacklist. Um, if we go to the sections tab, we'll see that this displays the various sections which make up the executable file. So here we see a few sections. We see 4 sections: the .text section, .rdata, .data, and .rsrc. The text section contains executable code. Uh, looking at the columns of the section names, we can see a, an X mark here under the executable. So basically, this gives us an indicator that the executable part of the file is located in this section, the .text section of the file. We can also see that out of the 100% that the file is made of, 52% roughly is the .text file, respectively 38 is for this section, 0.74 for this section, 8.11 for this section. We can also see that the .data section is the section where we can basically write on. Another great section that we want to look at is the library section. So the libraries tab is useful at displaying what DLLs or dynamic link libraries are being imported by the malware. So each DLL will contain a unique set of APIs. These are legitimate Windows functions that can be imported and used by the malware. So right now we can see all these are Windows related APIs. They're not blacklisted in any way because obviously they're legitimate APIs. What I can see here is the malware is taking use of the shlwapi.dll, which is basically it can be used for registering reg entries, basically, or entries in the registry set. Another great section to go through is the strings tab. Basically, the strings tab lists any human readable strings that PE Studio has identified within the binary. PE Studio will tell you what type of string has been found, where it resides in the binary. But what I find most useful is the blacklist and hint sections. So basically, that's the blacklist and that's the hint section. We can filter out here and see uh, in terms of hint what it is, so we know that this is a function, and this whether it's blacklisted, meaning whether this sort of function has been found in other types of malware as well. So if we filter out, first of all, we see that the code is not obfuscated at all, at least in this section. It's human readable. We can see it's not just jumbled up information like shell execute X. We see Windows help, search path, remove directory, all these functions here that are related to the file. We see that it's a very dodgy file. There's some things that are happening. When it comes to ransomware, we usually see delete file, find next file, remove directory. Usually we see shell execute. In other samples, I've seen the crypt something function that tells you that it's going to encrypt the information, but I don't see it here. Well, we don't have a lot of time. I don't want to spend too much time looking into the details, but I'm sure it's somewhere around here. As you can see, some of the information is just jumbled information. There's nothing in there. Well, there is something in there, but we can't see it at the moment. All right. There's some weird information. Right. Well, basically at this point, we've reached a dead end as far as the basic static analysis goes. We have a lot of information that we found out, and we can all put that in the report. And we now have an idea whether the file is an executable, whether the sample was packed or not, whether the sample was compiled, does it have any embedded executables, and so on. So now what we'll do is we'll move on to the dynamic analysis where we'll open different tools and we'll prepare a graph to show how the file actually behaves upon executing it.